Good morning. We'd like to welcome everybody to the Shepherd Station. We're back at the Stockyard in Headland, Alabama. As always, with me is Andy Hughes, former sheriff of Houston County, and Thomas Brown, associate pastor of Gateway Church in Headland. We have a very interesting show for you today. A great topic from somebody who has a lot of experience in that category. And with that, I'm going to turn everything over to Andy.
Well, thank you, Eric. I know last week we had talked about the topic that we were going to cover this week, and y'all wanted to do something on leadership. And leadership is it's a pretty deep topic, and like I like to say, the philosophy of good leadership is very simple and straightforward. It's the execution is what's difficult in leadership. I've never been a great leader. I have been in position to lead people before, and I've learned a lot from others who have led me, and I've learned a lot also through my leadership of others. And a true leader should never attempt to create followers. That is not your goal. Your goal as a leader is to create other leaders, future leaders. And that's why we need to make sure that leaders today need to make sure that they're mentoring and nurturing those under them, their subordinates, especially those that they can identify that have the true potential to be great leaders in the future. So you never want to create followers. Being a leader is not social media. You're not trying to see how many followers you can get. You want to create future leaders.
That's good.
People to actually, carry the burden once you've released it, and, on to the future generations. So if you're new to listening to what we've been putting out lately, we haven't put out a whole lot, but you'll pick up on the fact that Andy and I are very passionate about the law enforcement aspect of things and creating Christian men with a heart of service, in that field. But we're really kind of gearing everything today for any man that is finding himself in that position or even wants to aspire to be that. Andy, would you agree that at any level you are, you can still demonstrate leadership qualities?
Yes, and being a leader doesn't mean that you have a title that has been bestowed upon you either. Anybody can be a leader in a moment where leadership is needed the most. So a lot of people step up and be leaders, whether it be in the military, whether it be in the law enforcement realm, whether it be in business or whatever the case may be.
In the church?
In the church, at home. There are a lot of people that end up being leaders that maybe were reluctant to be a leader initially. But people can step up and be a leader at any time without a title or without a certain classification as a leader or being called a leader or being called a sheriff or a chief or a president or a senator or a pastor. You don't have to have that title to be able to step up and be a leader. And we've seen numerous instances in military combat where so-called leaders who had titles, who had rank, failed in a moment of truth. And others that held an actual lower rank, had less stripes or bars or stars on their collar or their sleeve, actually stepped up and became a leader in a circumstance where leadership was needed and that need was not being met by the person who actually held the title.
Yeah, and you can see that in law enforcement as well. How many times have you been on a scene or, one of those situations where the stress level is so high and people do freeze? And I'm not, I wouldn't call anybody out. That's not right. But I've been there where you see that happen. And the lowest man, the new rookie, he steps into place and he takes control. I think, like you said, there's no title that goes with somebody who wants to demonstrate the leadership qualities. So I know that you've got some stuff written down. How can we motivate people to develop those qualities in themselves, no matter what level they're in, no matter what walk of life they're in? That's what we want to talk about here is, men stepping back into their role as men, as Christians, as leaders of their home, as leaders of what they do. And so how do we develop that? How do you get somebody motivated to develop that inside themselves?
Well, I think the very first thing that you want to do is that people, if they see good leadership, if they If they experience good leadership, then they want to mimic that. If they want to be good leaders, they want to mimic that. So the very first thing we can do, anybody who is a leader, is to first and foremost set a good example for people, so that they can try to mimic that, and and encourage them to want to be leaders. Not everybody wants to be a quote formal leader. Not everybody wants the responsibility.
They don't want the title.
And people's like, hey, no, I just want to come in, I want to do my job, I want to go home, that kind of thing. And you're going to have people like that in any organization, and you've got to have those type of people. You've got to have the ones that are going to come in, they're going to do their job, nothing more, nothing less. They don't want any responsibilities. And to tell you the truth, the people that are of that mindset, you don't want them to have any more responsibilities, because they're probably not going to fulfill the true responsibilities of a leader if that's their train of thought to start with.
Right. You said something a minute ago, and you used a term kind of stuck with me, reluctant. In your experience, as long as you've done things, as long as you put people in certain positions, who do you think displays, and I'll tell you what I think, kind of being in a similar spot, but who do you think is the guy that displays or is easier to develop into those leadership roles? Is it the guy that's jumping and, I'm wanting to get into that, let me have that shot, let me do this? Or is it the guy that you kind of sit back and, you use the term reluctant, maybe he's a little bit reluctant to step into that role, be it from humility, be it, a humble heart, whatever the case is? Which one do you think turns out normally to be, in your experience, have you seen turn out to be the better in those positions? I guess what I'm questioning, which one rises to that challenge better?
Right. A lot of times it's the reluctant leader, the one who actually has the qualities of a good leader, but they're reluctant to step up, or they don't want to step up and act like, hey, I want to take charge. They're not a take charge kind of person. You see some people that want to be leaders, and they only want it because of the title. They only want it because of the pay. They only want it because of the status. Let me tell you, especially being a chief or a sheriff, where you're the head honcho in a law enforcement agency, or either in the military, or you even being a pastor. You get that title and you're in that position, and it's not about all the glamour and the glory. It's going to be, the first time something goes awry, something goes wrong, you've got a situation, you've got a problem that you've got to own yourself as the head person in charge. And you've got to say, no matter what happened here, no matter who actually did this, this falls upon my shoulders. Because the head of the organization, whoever it may be, everything falls on their shoulders. So, and the luster and the glamour of that leadership position and that pay and everything will kind of fade away once you have something kind of go awry. If you're not a true leader. If you are a true leader, then you're gonna put your shoulder down, and you're gonna press forward. You're gonna be accountable. You're going to take responsibility for what's going on in your organization, and you're going to take care of business and do what you have to do. And it's being a leader is not always pleasant. Being a leader is not always fun. Sometimes you have to do the hard things, and that's what you're getting paid the extra money for, and that's why you got the title, and that's why you're in that position. If you're not willing to accept doing the hard things or the things that are not pleasant, then you probably don't need to be a leader, especially at a certain level anyway. But reluctant people, we just take Gideon in the Bible. Gideon was a reluctant leader. He was a very meek, mild, quiet kind of guy, and God tapped him to defeat the Midianite army. And Gideon actually tested God. I don't know if I would have had the guts to test God the way Gideon did. He actually,
I don't know, Andy. From what our experiences in the past, I don't mean to cut you. You tried to test a lot of people. So
I know I've tested God before, but not intentionally like Gideon did. But he actually told God, hey, there are two tests here. About the dew on the fleece, and in two different ways, and God showed him that hey, this is true, and this is what I need you to do, and he done it, and he was a great leader, and so
I guess you could say Moses was a reluctant leader all the way through as well.
Yeah.
How many times did he go to God like, I'm not the man for this,
right?
And God's like, no, here you go, you're going to do it, you're going to do it. So
He did it. He did it, and he did it well.
Yeah.
The first thing that any leader or potential leader, I think, needs to realize is that they have no wisdom. All wisdom, all leadership ability comes directly from God and is ordained of God. And the Bible even says that God ordains bad leaders also for his purpose. And I think we're in that purpose right now here in the United States of America. I'll have to say we're definitely in that purpose.
I'm
now.
not going to put you in the position to say, hey, expound on what you're talking about.
Yeah,
But anyway.
so we got some pretty bad leaders, and the Bible also says that a nation that is lawless will have numerous bad leaders also, and I think we're seeing that right now because our nation is in a lawless society right now because people don't want to follow God's will and follow God's laws.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that going on now. But all leadership is ordained of God, and all wisdom for good leadership comes directly from God. Wow. And you've got to realize that, and you got to, as a leader, I think you need to pray every single day. God, please give me the wisdom that I do not have in order to be a leader of my organization or my family or my church.
So, wow, that's such a poignant statement, what you said about all leadership is appointed by God, because you look at the state of our world, and
Sorry about the noise. We still got business going on.
no, you're good. You look at the state of our world, and I don't know many Christians that would say, "Wow, this is appointed by God." You know what I mean? That now there are those that are like, "Well, this is the end. You know, we're coming on the end times. This is something that could definitely be, caused by God, so that things kind of, start wrapping up." But just the fact that you said that, I think that's so important for us to realize as Christians. And there's so many people that have such a huge problem with authority and leadership, not recognizing that, Psalm says that God steers the heart of the king in like rivers, like the streams. He steers the heart of the king. He's the one who is in control. He is the one in control. Everything that happens is up to God. And that's believing he's sovereign. So that's so good that you said that. I think that's something that we would all really benefit from believing.
I like how you said that all wisdom. How did you put it? Say that again. You have no wisdom except that has been given to you by God. How did you? I mean, that's not word for word for what you said.
Right. I don't care who you are. If you're the most educated mathematician or scientist or business leader, whoever you are, to think that the wisdom that you have to be great or to be smart came from you is totally foolish. It is.
Absolutely, 100%.
But
And that's why I liked it, because I've seen the failures of many that are put in positions, and I say failures. I may have been one of them. Put in certain positions. I'm like, I got this, man. I know what I'm doing.
it's easy to get sucked into that. The
It
more
is.
experience you have.
The more experience you have, I'm good at what I do.
Yep.
And I can do this.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most important, I think it's a very important quality for anybody that gets put in that position. You need to choose a level of humility. And it took me a long time to figure this out. A humble heart and a level of humility is an essential trait to anybody who is going to succeed in that position of leadership. And you have to be able to surrender in your mind and in your heart, this isn't necessarily me doing this.
Right.
Because if you do, you're actually leaning on your own arrogance.
There you go. Yeah. And your own understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we fail at that all the time.
Right.
So let's
And that's
Just put that
that's
out
the
there.
main thing, I think there's this big thing with in Christian culture, even to say, don't use your intellect is your enemy, when in reality, the Bible says to not lean on your own understanding. It doesn't say to not use it, to not have understanding. Actually, it says that's the wisdom of kings, is to find out the end of a matter. It's in Proverbs, that's the thing to do, but it says to not lean on it.
Yeah.
Which is a very different thing. It means that if the thing you're leaning on is taken out from under you, you're going to fall.
Yeah. Well, you've got to always remember where it came from.
That's right.
I was about
Just-
to say
just the
yeah,
source.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
the source of your understanding.
That's right. Yeah.
And let's go back a second to all leaders being anointed or ordained by God. Daniel 2, verses 20 through 21 says, "Let the name of God be blessed forever, for wisdom and power belong to him. It is he who changes the times and the epochs. He removes kings and establishes kings. He gives wisdom to wise men and knowledge to men of understanding." And also, let's look at John 19:11. It says, and this is Jesus speaking here, and he's talking to Pilate, and Pilate's asking him to speak, and he doesn't speak back to Pilate or to give any defense. And Jesus answered, "You would have no authority over me unless it had been given to you from above. For this reason, he who delivered me to you has the greater sin." So he's saying right there to Pilate that you were ordained by God as a leader for God's purpose, which was to have Christ crucified on the cross.
Right.
So, and Pilate was in there. He was not responsible for delivering Jesus to be crucified, but he was a leader that actually, gave the Jewish people the choice, of who they wanted executed on the cross.
Yeah.
So, there it is for a purpose right there. God's ordained that leader, even though it's a bad leader, it's for his purpose.
Yeah, I want to even go back to something even before that, and I think this sort of has to do with Herod. Even, something you'd said was you get paid more. You get paid to make the decisions. Like it's you're the one that has to live with the responsibility. And I've read this book, and I pulled up all the quotes from it because I was like, I'm going to look through this and see what sticks out while we're talking. But it's Spiritual Leadership by J. Oswald Sanders. I don't know if you've read that or not, but it's a fantastic book. And one of the things he says is that in most decisions, the key element is not so much knowing what to do, but in living with the results. And in that, when God places people in positions of leadership and authority, like that's always the case. It's that you make the decision, and the reason why you get paid the most is because you're the one that is going to have to live with the results. It doesn't matter. It's not about making the right choice. It's about living with the results of whatever decision you make in line of what God's wanting to do. And in that, Herod, he was making a choice. He made a decision. Now, obviously, it wasn't based on God's,
right.
But God still was in control of it, and he had to live with that, and that's such an important thing to remember, I think, even as leaders, is that it's not about, because we get so wrapped up in trying to make the right choice, make the right decision, when sometimes there doesn't seem to be a glaring
there's
answer.
not anything that's clear.
Yeah, a
to
glaring
you.
answer. And so it's like sometimes it's just you're the leader. That means you're the one that has to just live with the consequences of what's going to go on. Herod had to live with those consequences. We all have to live with the consequences. We're all leaders to a degree if we think about it in that aspect.
And we are all leaders. And when you're in the positions that Andy's been in, and myself's been in, and even you with the church, you have to have some metaphor, obviously, but a very large, strong set of shoulders. Because, as Andy said before, a lot of guys, they want to wear the collar brass. They want to walk around with the badge that says, "I'm this," or they want to put out there in front of them, "I am so-and-so." Maybe in your case, "I am Pastor so-and-so. I'm in charge." When the reality comes down to it, every decision goes through you. All the things that have to take place, well, you're making those decisions, and you're piling responsibility on your shoulders, one after the other, after the other. And if something goes bad, guess who that comes crashing down on? It comes crashing down on you. Yeah, you have people that are under you that are doing some of the work, and some of the responsibility has to fall on them, but ultimately everything comes back to you. And when you look at it, that's a humbling way to look at things. I'm not in charge because I'm better than anybody else. I'm in charge because I'm able to bear the responsibility that comes with it. And that gets really heavy. I kind of don't know where I'm going with this. I had a thought process there, but the heaviness of the responsibility of it, it's something that everybody needs to think about. And I'm not saying that to shy away from it. We need guys to rise to that. Mm-hmm. We need men to rise to that. I go back to, every time when we sit there and talk about this, I love that statement. You are the representation of Christ in your household. You can be a leader in your house. You have to step up to the things and the responsibilities of being that man of your house. being that representation in your house. You have to step up to that. We've got to push men and develop men to step back into the role in any walk of society to be able to shoulder those burdens that are going to be coming, because they're not, you can't hide from them.
Yeah.
They're going to be there. You have to
Right.
deal with them.
Right.
And anybody can demonstrate the leadership qualities, no matter what, like a walk of life in there. You've just got to be able to bear what comes from the decisions you make.
Right.
You've got to be able to make the right, I say make the right decisions, make the decisions that God wants you to make, even though you might not understand them.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of tough decisions to be made in a leadership position, and I've had to make some tough ones, and some that I didn't want to make, and had to take some administrative action against personnel that I had under my command, and either terminate people's employment or give them time off without pay or whatever the case may be. And I always tried to be fair, and I always had a saying about the personnel who served under me or as a leader. I always said, stand up for your people when they're right, stand beside them when they're wrong, and prosecute them when they're criminals. And even when your people do wrong, you got to stand beside them. Now, if it goes into the criminal nature, of course, you're going to prosecute them. You're not going to stand beside them. But if they do something wrong, and we all make mistakes, you want to correct that mistake and put them back out there. One of the things that I would be proudest of as a leader is that I would be able to tell you that I don't think you could find anybody that would tell you that whenever I counseled them or disciplined them, that I was mad with them when it happened. And I gave them a pat on the back when it was over with and say, okay, it's over. Let's get back out there. Let's correct your action now, and let's get back to work.
Having been under you in that capacity, that was the big thing about you. And he's right. Guys would go to him. Guys would talk to him. I think that's another characteristic of a good leader. You need to be approachable. If you're approachable, you're given that opportunity to mentor the people under you at that point. You're right. The only thing that I really think that came down from some of the things that Andy did was you never lied to him. If you ever lied to him, well, it was pretty much you were signing your own ticket at that point. So.
Right.
Well, I used to always say, do three things I ask. Is, do your job, be a professional, and tell me the truth.
Yeah, that's it.
That was the three kind of requirements. Ask people.
I have a question for you in light of that, what you just said about whenever you've gone to somebody with an issue, you've not been angry. What was your mental state? How did you get to that mental state to be able to come to somebody with an issue with, whatever it is, and not be upset? Because I think there are a lot of men and leaders in general that don't handle that correctly. They come to people out of frustration. They deal with situations out of anger. What are some practical steps, or just what's your train of thought in that?
Well, number one, really, it's just business. Okay, it's boiling down to business. And maybe if somebody screwed up somewhere, maybe it's your fault to start with for not giving them the proper guidance or the proper
he's
training.
telling the truth. There's no doubt. You may fail in that position.
Yeah.
They may just not know.
Maybe this person did not have any guidance, or they had never had training on this particular issue, or never been issued a guideline or however to handle it, and they handled it the best way that they thought fit.
So you're saying, like, look at yourself first.
Yeah. Have you failed as a leader? Did they screw up because you had already failed as a leader in some shape, form, or fashion? And I've just never been one that's been really easy to anger either. And when it comes to you people, and one of the first, I said before, you've got to realize that wisdom, all wisdom, including wisdom that helps you to be a good leader, ultimately all comes from God. The second thing that you've got to realize is that leadership is about love. You've got, and this kind of goes back to Jesus. His leadership was all about love. But you got to go back and realize that as a leader, the first thing you have to do is you have to love your people.
You may not like some of them.
You may not like some of them, and some of them are not going to be the kind of people, and especially the larger the organization gets, some of the people are not going to be the type that you would go to the lake with on the weekend or barbecue with or things like that. But you've got to have a genuine love and concern for everybody that works under your command or under your leadership. And you've got to treat them the same. You know who your core group of people are. You know who that small percentage are that do a lot of the work. Like that old saying, 10% of the people do 90% of the work.
Right.
And that's true in any organization that you have. You know who your core people are that are your go-to people that are going to get the mission accomplished.
Right.
And then you've got some on the fringe there that do a really good job, but maybe they're not as dependable. Then you got some that's just going to come and they're just going to barely meet your expectations as an employee.
Your slot fillers.
Yeah, but you've still got to love every single one of them and be concerned about them, be concerned about their families and what's going on at home. Or if you've got people that are happy at home, we always try to make people happy, but in a public safety setting, it's kind of hard to do that. In a 24/7 operation, everybody's not going to get day shift, okay, and that kind of thing. I remember when I first started in law enforcement, I had like Mondays and Tuesdays off.
Yeah, exactly, 8-hour shifts
for a long time.
Midnights.
You were on night shift with Monday and Tuesdays off until somebody died or got promoted. Till you could move up.
And you were happy to do that.
Yeah,
Right.
But then later on, they come up the law enforcement schedule that most everybody works now is 3 on, 2 off, 2 on, 3 off. So even if you're on nights, the most shifts you're going to work in a row is 3, and then you take a couple of days off. You're going to be off for multiple days, and you have every other Friday, Saturday, Sunday off too, which is just hard to beat in the public safety arena. But used to it didn't be like that. So, but try to make everybody happy at home. If they're happy at home, then they're going to be happy at work. They're going to be able to come do their job. If they're worried about things going on at home and things are not right, then they're not going to be paying attention to what they're doing when they come to work. And that holds true in any organization or any workforce.
You asked a question. What exactly was your question? About
just how do you get in that mental state to
not
deal
being
with
angry.
conflict? I mean, really what we're talking about is dealing with conflict, right? As a leader.
Yeah.
I was teaching somebody. I say teaching. I'm kind of mentoring somebody right now that is trying to move into that position of a leadership role. And a young guy, he wants to do it, and I think he wants to do a good job. He has got some maturing to do. And one of the things that I sat there and talked with him about was literally making those decisions, making those hard decisions. Nothing ever good comes out of anger. All right. And in the roles that we have been in law enforcement, you're going to find yourself put in positions often where you could see where somebody can get angry real fast. Maybe it's because of what kind of call you're on or whatever the circumstances are. Maybe somebody got, I'm not going to go in, there's a plethora of things that could put you in that mindset, in that position of being the one in charge, however you want to term it. Never make the decisions while you're angry. Never make the decisions while you're sad, while you're excited, or in any way upset. Nothing good is going to come out of that.
Yeah.
A lot of people have sat there and said, well, you're put in those positions where I had to take disciplinary action against people. Well, you're not, why are you not doing this or why are you not doing that? I said, because I'm thinking about the decision I'm going to make.
Right. What about when a decision has to be made quickly?
Well, that's a little different story. I mean,
Comes
that's
from
that's a life or death kind of thing.
Right,
there,
yeah.
you know.
That comes from an experience level. You have to have people that do have the experience to do that position.
Yeah.
You kind of fall back on what.
Yeah. But typically, whether you're making a decision about the structure of your agency or you're making a decision about disciplinary matters or, different things about personnel, they're not going to be a life or death decision. It's going to be something that you can sit down and be rational about. Just like Eric said, emotions should never take part in your decision-making process.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that you're making rational decisions, not based upon emotions, but based upon facts, and the truth. And sometimes you have to take a step back. And you may, I'm not going to say I've never been initially angry about something somebody did. When one of my command staff or somebody came to me and said, so-and-so, did this. And I'm like, what? Why in the world would you do something like that? It's crazy,
Yeah.
And bring me some facts. But by the time you get to the point to where you're going to make a decision or you're going to pull somebody in the office and you're going to counsel them or you're going to say, I'm firing you and this is why, I've actually had people I fired, and they come back later and say, hey, I deserved it. You did what you had to do, that kind of thing. And you don't ever want to take someone's livelihood away from them. You don't ever want to take that paycheck away from their family. You don't want to take their livelihood away from them, especially just if they just screwed up and didn't have a history. But sometimes you just have to do things. And like I said, leadership is not always pleasant.
Yeah.
And a lot of those things that I've had to do, it's like went home at night, like, my God, I wish I wouldn't have to do that today. I hated to do that. But then you got to press on and move forward for the betterment of your organization. You got to get back, and it's a new day the next morning. You got to press on.
And that's what you have to look at. You said it, the betterment of your organization. Decisions have to be made. You can't make them. You have to make decisions on a case-by-case basis, but you can't make it based on any individual. You have to be fair across the board. And good leadership comes, a good leader is going to have the ability to do that. You have to treat everybody, A, with respect, B, with fairness. And C, in many cases, I'm going to say, you always have to have compassion. But in the line of work that we're in, a lot of times compassion, you've got to do things basically under policy procedure, but with fairness. Compassion plays in there a lot. But you always have to look at the overall picture. Okay, what's going to be best for this guy? May not necessarily be the thing that needs to be done because it's not best for the agency, the society, the county, the city, whatever the case is. And those are the decisions he's talking about. They're not always easy. Sometimes they hurt. I've had to terminate people, and it wasn't something that I wanted to do. Now there were some that I was like, this guy just does not need to be here, and that was a good decision. But there's some that, man, I don't have a choice, and this is just what's got to happen. It's those kind of responsibilities that pile up on you. But I don't necessarily want to drive this so much as to the bad things that we have to do in leadership.
Well, and I have two questions to piggyback off of that, because you're probably going to go there, and so I don't want to hijack it. But I just want to ask, how do we take those things? Because you guys are talking about from an organizational standpoint, more corporate, but that stuff also applies to the family life, right? Like when you go home,
100%.
Yeah, how would you translate that, for our listeners from the business standpoint? We're talking about agencies, we're talking about all that kind of stuff, to your home life, all those things we said with leadership. That's my first question. My second question is, how do you not carry what it is you had to do at work into your home life?
That's a completely different story.
Yeah. So it's kind of contradicting questions in a way, but first off, we want to ask, how do we apply the good things about leadership at home from the business side to our family? And then the second question is, how do we not bring home all the baggage that we had to do with leadership at work?
I'm gonna hijack Andy here for a second, okay? And then I'm gonna let him, because he's gonna have. He's gonna expound on this. I can guarantee it. All right. Here's the problem with, especially the job that we did. Oh, goodness gracious! Look who's walking in the door. Everyone, his name is Jeremy Wallace, recently promoted to sergeant at Dothan PD. And he just walked right by us. Okay. So anyway, so how do you keep from bringing that home? That is a challenge for the ages. Okay. And it's going to go back to the first question you asked. How do we take all this stuff and we take it to our house to be the good leaders in our house?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that example is going to come back when we finally get to the point that we understand where everything that we have comes from, and it comes from God himself. The shining example that we need to be like is the ultimate in masculinity, the ultimate in manhood, and that's Jesus Christ. When we follow those examples, we start to learn how to handle ourselves better. But if we're not following those, if we're not adhering to the teachings that Jesus put out there and following how God wanted us to live, the nuclear family that God designed, okay, we've gotten so far away from that in society. Now you've got fatherless homes, you've got single parents, you've got this, you've got that. You got people that don't even know what they're going to do as far as a gender.
You got same-sex people adopting
Yeah,
children.
exactly. So they've destroyed that. But when we get back to what God designed us and how he designed us to be, it's easier for us to not bring that stuff home because we have that guiding light to show us how to do the right thing. When you get into how do you tell a police officer not to take his stuff home, it's hard. When we were coming up through this, that's what we were. We're cops. You know what? And we get so emotionally involved in each and everything. How many times were you and I going after people that we knew were selling dope? All right. And we knew more about those people than we really did our own family at some point. You know, we did. We had all the knowledge about these guys. You'd go home, you'd talk to your spouse about it, and you have to understand your spouse may not even be as involved in this as you are because it consumes you. Okay. So it's hard to not take that home.
And you can't get mad because you go home and your spouse is not as concerned about what you were doing at work as you are. You know,
Exactly.
You can't.
I get upset about anything, like where I'm like, if I'm like excited about something and I come home and I try to tell Jess about it, you know, and she's just like, nah, okay. I'm like, what?
I don't understand why you're not being as stoked as me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or somebody, you know, you have a bad day at work. You might have gone to, you know, a wreck, or like in many cases, you've been on them death scenes, and those things will stay with you, man. They do, you know. Or you've had to take, you know, a level of force against people that, you know, is probably going to get you, you know, some days off because it's just policy. You got to, you know, they got to investigate the situation. You bring all that home. The question you ask is, how do you not take that home? At the level of,
I guess what I meant necessarily isn't not what you take home, but what you produce because of it. How do you not allow that to affect your home?
that's a tough question.
Yeah,
that is such a
okay.
tough question
Well,
because
yeah.
all that affects these guys.
Because I know you're going to
differently.
take it home, but like how do you not allow it to affect your home life, your family life? You know,
Well,
or-
the thing you have to do is you have to make a conscious decision
yeah.
that you're not going to let it. You pull up in the yard, you get off work, pull up there in your patrol vehicle, you sit there for a few minutes, decompress a little bit, say, okay, this happened today, this happened today, this happened today. And I was never one to hide things from my family. I always told my family what went on during the day.
Now, do you feel like that's really important for a cop to do, or anybody that is dealing with something at work
Yeah.
to come home and tell their family what's going on?
Yeah,
Why do you
it
think that is?
You know, well, I mean, if you just come home and you're in a bad mood and you want to go get a drink and sit on the couch and be left alone or something like that, and they're like, what's going on with Daddy? What's going on with my husband? What's going on with my wife? You know, why are they ill when they come home from work? They have no idea what you went through today. And people who are civilians, people out in the law enforcement realm and even the military realm, they don't understand. If they've never actually been there, they don't understand. And the only way for them to even have a small understanding of what you go through is for you to relate that to them. And you don't tell gory details to your children, you know. Unless
might not tell gory details to your wife and your spouse.
But you know, you got to say, hey, listen, this is what happened today. If I'm a little bit sad, I'm a little bit mad, whatever the case may be, this is the reason why. This is what I saw today. This is what happened to me today. I had to fire somebody today. I saw a dead child today. I saw some children in a situation they didn't need to be in, and the social services agency didn't take them out of the situation either. You know, they didn't do what I thought should have been done. I dealt with some homeless people today, whatever the case may be.
Or hey,
Yeah.
how about this one?
Yeah.
Hey, the guy that, you know, we got for XYZ charges got off on him, you know, due to a technicality. This stuff weighs on you.
Yeah,
You
lost
work
a
all
court
this-
case
yeah, lost a
today.
court case today.
Yeah.
What can happen? Sorry, I know you've got lots of thoughts. I'm trying to, because I have so many questions. What can happen, you know, if you do that? If you come home, you just suppress it all. You don't tell your family. You come home, you feel a certain way. What?
Alcoholism.
And you're gonna alienate your family.
Absolutely.
You're gonna
Divorce.
alienate them.
There's a very, very high level of divorce in law enforcement. I mean, there's a high level of divorce in the nation now anyway. I've been subject to it. Andy's been subject to it. But you add in the stressors of the law enforcement and the military. Military's no different. You got guys coming back from deployments, and it's hard to adjust. It really is. You know, you see things that just people shouldn't see. And spouses, you know, or I say spouses, but if you've never been there, you don't understand. And if you just compress it and you push it down, which I have been guilty of, I did. I think I told you this story. That's a story for another day. But I did. I pressed it down and I pressed it down and I pressed it down. And then you start to see substance abuse. And I mean, it takes place in law enforcement. It does.
Yeah.
You know, people self-medicate.
Drugs or alcohol.
Alcoholism, abuse at the home, A lot of guys, and I will say ladies, will start taking some of this stuff out on their family in an unhealthy way, obviously, which leads to destruction and, the downfall of the family. How do we combat that? Andy hit the nail on the head. There's got to be a level of communication. You have to communicate. The longer you push something down, it's like a hard drive in a computer. You can only put so much information in it before it starts dumping out.
Right. And would you say that you, as a leader in your home, you're coming home, you have all this stuff, you're not talking about it, right? I'm just giving the example. And your wife is seeing that, your kids are seeing that, you're upset, but they don't know why. Would you say that sort of sets the tone for your family for when you come home? If you're doing that constantly, even if you wake up, and you're like that because you have these undealt with things that you're not communicated, are you setting the tone for your family? Like, what kind of tone are you setting even,
Jeremy Wallace just walked back up. You want to get in on this? Are you sure? It's good to see you, buddy.
We'll have you back again.
Yeah, we'll have you back. That might be dangerous to bring Jeremy on here. So anyway.
But, going back to something else, talking about all this, and what you just said, Thomas, that's going to translate back into work also. Because if you're having problems at home, you're going to take those problems back to work. Either that, you're going to want to go back to work, and you want to stay at work and not come home.
Oh, yeah.
You'll find reasons to go and stay at work,
right,
and
I've
not
been
come
there.
home, work overtime or work cases, on and on and on. But we got to remember, leadership, whether you're at work or you're at home, is a dialogue, not a monologue.
Oh, that's good.
You've got a dialogue between you and all of your people at work that are under your command, and your family members at home, your wife and your children. And you can't expect to be a leader and tell everybody what to do and not get any feedback from whatsoever. Any leader, and it's hard to get into this, especially the higher levels of leadership. You got to realize that you're not the smartest person in the room. You're just the one that happens to be in charge, And I've always tried to, whether it was whatever position I was in, the lowest ranking person, the newest person there may have thought of something you didn't think about. And I remember when I was with Dothan PD as a sergeant, and we would be going to put some patrol operation at night, assault one of the housing areas or whatever where they were selling drugs, and I'd say, okay, guys, we're going to do this, 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 and this. And then some new guy over there's go, hey, Sarge, what about this? Say, hey, I didn't think about that.
That's a good idea.
You got a good point there. Okay, let's change our plan up here. As a leader, you cannot be afraid of realizing and vocalizing that, hey, I am not the smartest person here in the room. I just happen to be the person with the stripes on my sleeve or the stars or bars on my collar, and I've got to make the final decision. But you are not the smartest. When they convey a title upon you saying you're a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, chief, sheriff, whatever, it's not automatically giving you some higher level of IQ. It's not bumping your IQ up a few points every time you make rank.
No, absolutely.
Okay?
No, it doesn't.
I've seen some where I thought it lowered their IQ.
Yeah, maybe.
They made some rank.
So what you're saying there, and one of the things that, we'll go back to our Dothan PD days. So Andy and I kind of bounced back in the day. I was a team leader for the SWAT team for the Dothan Police Department, and Andy we would go back and forth with, okay, he's team leader now, and I'm assistant team leader, and kind of go back and forth. When I needed a break, he'd take it. When he needed a break, we'd swap it around. But if you remember, I think one of the good things about somebody who's in a position and can demonstrate good leadership is like Andy said, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I've seen some guys that they want to put that out there, that they know all, that they're end all, that they be all, and they surround themselves with people that of much lesser intelligence than them.
Sir, yes, sir.
So they look better. Now, on our level, I would say, would you agree with what I'm about to say? And you may not, but we would look for guys, operators for the SWAT team. We get a new guy come into the department, and Andy would actually go through and say, well, this guy was, Marine Corps this, or Army this, or hey, he was, SWAT in whatever location where he was before. And we start recruiting those guys. I use one, for example, as Marine Corps fast guy. Anyway, this guy was, he was red hot. But we go after these guys. We had, 20th Group Special Forces guys that we wanted them on the team with us. As a team leader, I wanted people. I didn't know everything. I know that. I wanted people better than me on this team with us, because all that did was it expounded on the skill set that we had, made us a much better team. And at the end of the day, it made it successful.
Yeah.
But I think a good leader has to have the ability to step back and go, well, I don't know everything. I can't do everything. Let me get the best people in this position to do these things that need to be done.
Would you say that it also helped you grow?
Oh, absolutely.
Surrounding yourself with people smarter than you.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
yeah.
you learn so much more. I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't know anything about explosive breaching. We had two of the best explosive breachers there were.
Yeah.
And to this day, I still don't know how to set a breaching charge, but I mean, I know what happens, it takes place.
Yeah, right.
Open my mouth. and
Yeah,
go
open
for
my
the ball.
mouth. Yeah. But, I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. You need to know what skills people have so that you can effectively use them. Something I did whenever I was sheriff. I didn't know everybody at the sheriff's office. I'd been gone from there for like 17 and a half years when I ran for sheriff and then got elected and went back. And there was very few people there that were there whenever I was a deputy, back in the late 80s. So, and this wasn't my idea. I stole this from a book, but I had all the sworn members of our agency to write me a bio. I sent out a memo. I said, I want you to write me a bio. I want you to tell me about, where you were born, where you went to school at, what other jobs have you had, what other skills do you have, this, that, and the other. And so I started getting these things in. They'd come trickling in. I'd get 3 or 4 a day, and I'd take them home at night and read them. And I'd say, okay, well, this person here, they've got IT skills that they attained before they were in law enforcement. I've got a guy here that was a Navy CB. He's got carpenter skills and construction skills. I got this person here these skills, and so I knew throughout our agency who had what skill sets. We needed target stands built. I knew who we were going to talk to. So put this guy on duty, and he's going to build target stands today instead of being patrolling the zone or whatever the case may be. People that had IT skills, we looked for jobs to put them in that were going to be beneficial to the agency and to them. They could enhance their skills, plus we could use their skills. So you need to know what your people are actually capable of outside of whatever their primary job is also.
Yeah. Can you be a really good leader in your job and a terrible leader at home?
I think you can. I've been that before.
What causes that? Why do you
admit
think
that.
somebody would strive to just be their best at their job but not care?
It's just it's not that you not care. I think it's just a different front that you're fighting on, and a lot of time people, your family look at you. They look at you differently than people that report to you at work do. Also, so sometimes you're going to have different results. Also, but the same principles apply to both, but we don't always apply them.
Could you say that with your family, that it comes back to a level of complacency, that you okay, my family's there, I don't have to worry about them. This is where my focus is going to be. When in reality, our focus should be on our family. First. First. Our family should be first.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
obviously.
and I'll be the first to admit that I've neglected things in my family before that I reflect upon now and say, man, I could have done much better as a father and much better as a husband. I did better as a leader in law enforcement than I did as a leader in my home, and it's not something that I'm proud of there either. But a lot of that comes with age and experience, and that comes along with mentoring. I mean, older guys, people who have more experience, mentoring these young leaders and making sure that we tell them from the outset, this is what you need to be doing. You don't need to neglect this at home. You need to make sure that you've got a work-life balance. You need to make sure that you're applying the same principles of leadership at home as you do at work, maybe just in a different manner also. But that comes from mentoring and nurturing the people that you want to replace you one day.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, you have to live that example too.
Yeah.
You do. I can sit there and tell you, as a new officer, as a new employee. We keep going back to the officer thing, but as a new employee, in any, we'll call it a high stress environment, whatever, you have to live that example. And it takes a while to understand this. It took me 50 years to understand, that your leadership comes through your example. I can sit there and tell you all day, hey, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that. That's not really going to stick with you. When Andy talks about mentoring, I think what he's trying to tell you is that you have to be the example. And people see that. If you have a level of respect with the people that follow you, they want to emulate you. And in that, if you're showing them the right thing to do, you're teaching, you're leading, you're mentoring without ever saying a word. And I think that, I don't know of a better example of somebody to follow than that.
Well, and what you're saying is so true, and it's obvious because when you look at what people are drawn to as far as learning how to do things and learning, they watch YouTube. A lot of people, it's like YouTube is now the number one search engine.
Yeah.
It's not just an entertainment device; it's a search engine. And
I ain't gonna lie, I go to it if I need to learn how to do my brakes.
Yeah.
I'm going to
What
YouTube.
would you
I'm a YouTube
rather do?
mechanic,
Would you rather hear somebody tell you what to do and not show you, or would you rather somebody show you what to do? It's easier because you have an example in front of you. You can remember that, and it has an impact on you that just words or writing it down on a piece of paper wouldn't have. So to be an example is definitely far more impactful than just telling somebody how they should be.
So the question is where do we get the example that we need to be for these people?
Yeah, and I think also before we move on from that, I just want to say that leadership has to start with us. You have to lead, you have to start with your own self, because I think if you're not disciplined, if you're not seeking to make yourself better as a person, as a child of God, as a leader of yourself, it's going to be really, really, really hard to lead others.
Yeah. If you can't lead yourself, who else can you lead?
Yeah, because I think the hardest people to lead are those that are closest to us. And who's the closest person to you? Yourself.
Yeah.
A good key word you threw out in there was discipline.
Yeah.
It takes a level of discipline. Not everybody has that nowadays.
Yeah.
I see the discipline levels declining because it is so easy just to set back, especially for men, because the current and next generation up are being taught to be something completely different. Which is kind of I don't want to see that. I don't want to see my son like that. I want to see my son step up and be the man that I know he can be.
Yeah.
Both of my sons. We got a society that we're fighting against every day.
Yeah.
How do we, and Andy, I know you got a whole list of notes here. I want you to get to all of them because this was really supposed to be yours. How do we get this generation to step up and do what we're talking about?
Yeah. It's not about comfort. We've got to get comfort out of the future generations.
We have to become comfortable being uncomfortable.
Exactly.
That's right.
It's not about comfort and always being warm and always being cozy and
Right.
always being without conflict. Because with leadership, whether you're at home or whether you're at work or whether you're in the church or wherever you're at, with leadership is going to come conflict. And I'm not going to say that conflict's always bad. But with leadership, you're going to have conflict. If you're not, then somebody's either you're not leading or somebody else is not following like they should be. You're not preparing future leaders.
And if you're not disciplined and you have conflict, what happens?
Yeah, you're going to fall. You're going to fold. You're going to fold
Rather quickly.
And leaders. One thing leaders need to be cognizant of is you need to have a set of principles that you are going to stand upon no matter what. You've got to have a set of principles, a set of morals that no matter what the conflict is, no matter what the pushback is, no matter what the public or private pressure is, that you're going to stand upon those no matter what. And we're seeing a lot of law enforcement leaders today in this nation that they're only, like I like to say, they're more concerned with their position than they are about the mission at hand. And, they're going to do whatever the mayor says. They're going to do whatever somebody else says to do, whatever public interest group is fighting upon
to
them.
them backing down to all these things that
Yeah,
come up.
yeah.
When obviously the officers or the deputies will be right, and these leaders are backing down, and they're putting these officers either on admin leave or termination, or in some cases prosecution, when they did their job. Is that what you're referring to?
They're going to throw them to the wolves. I mean, and whether it's your officers who are at risk or whether it's you. You know what I'm saying? No, in my opinion, it's my opinion, no job, no position, no title is worth you compromising your principles. Because if you don't have your principles that you live by, what do you really have?
You don't have anything.
What are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a coward.
You need to define that hill that you're going to die on.
Yeah, you're a coward.
you know.
If you're not willing to stand up for what you believe in, you're a coward. I'll
100%.
call you one to your face every single
I
day.
agree with that 100%.
No matter what the cost.
I
Sometimes
think-
there's going to be cost. There's going to be discomfort. There's going to be things that there's going to be sacrifices because you did what was right.
What was right?
That would be a really good podcast. I think that should be an episode where we talk about standing up for truth.
Yeah.
What it means as a man to stand up for truth, what that looks like, where those lines are, where those boundaries are. You know?
Like we
gonna
said
tell you-
before, there is only one truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Standing up for truth it can cost you everything, but in the process of costing you everything, it can gain you everything.
Yeah.
So you need to define that hill that you're going to die on. As my wife likes to put it so many times, we have several hills that we're willing to die on. Most of them fall under the Constitution and under the Bible. Period.
Right.
So, as coming up through the ranks as we did, you always had that moral guidance, I guess. You were doing the right thing, and whether we knew we were doing the right thing under what God wanted us to do or not, we knew we were doing the right thing. I think as you get older, as you get more experienced in whatever walk of life you're in, you start to see that where those principles come from. I don't read the Bible as much as I do, but I have really started. Over the last year, I'm one time into the Bible and I'm about halfway through again, but I've gotten more into studying,
Yeah.
So those biblical principles, as you read it, you're like, well, that's where that comes from. That's why I'm that way,
Right.
You've got to have that guiding moral purpose. Like Andy said, you've got to have those principles that you're willing to stand on. Yeah. My principles are everything that comes out of the Bible. I used to sit there and say this, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, blah, blah, blah. You've heard that before. I don't believe in religion. And I don't necessarily believe in religion.
I don't believe in legalism.
Yeah.
I think
Structured.
Yeah.
I think religion is very fallible. I do believe in the spiritual relationship between, you and God and Jesus Christ. I believe that needs to be on a personal level.
Yeah.
I adhere to the Christian doctrine, if you will. If it's in the Bible, then by God, that's it. And I didn't used to be that way. To kind of get on a side note here, it was, well, the Bible's been interpreted so many times by different men, blah, 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 blah. And I don't really think that God, meant that in this, that we've kind of messed the Bible up. But as I've been studying and as I've grown in it, I start to realize it never did change. It hasn't changed. They're showing proof that it's the same that it's been the whole time. If it's in the Bible, it is 100% fact. And that is the moral compass and the principles that I stand on. And like I said, that's the hill that I'll die on. And I'm like you. If you don't stand on your principles, if you don't have something you stand for, you're a coward. And I don't mind calling somebody a coward to their face.
That's right. Going back to some scripture I had researched leading up to this, and this is Jethro, who was the father-in-law of Moses, and he's speaking to Moses after Moses had led the children of Israel out of Egypt, and Moses was their one and only leader, and he had like people lined up, coming to him with different issues and that kind of thing, and Jethro was telling him, you can't do this by yourself.
Yeah.
You can't continue to do this by yourself. And Exodus 18:21 says, furthermore, you shall select out of all the people able men who fear God, men of truth, those who hate dishonest gain, and you shall place these over them as leaders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. And 18:25 says, Moses chose able men out of all Israel and made them heads over the people, leaders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. And he uses criteria here, but one person can't do it all. We've got to have multiples of good leaders who lead based upon these principles here that Jethro was outlining to Moses in counseling him on his selection of leaders to serve under him also.
Yeah. Yep.
And if we had some people at the highest level of government in this country that would live by these principles and also choose their subordinates by these principles, we'd be a lot better off today.
Would it be safe to say that we don't have that in this country right now?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment.
Yeah, not at the moment for sure.
I know that we're probably going to get some backlash over that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that we ever have, 100% anyway.
Right.
100%. A lot of people want to pick their buddies to be their command staff,
Yeah.
their friend. They want to pick their close friends to be command staff and that kind of thing. And loyalty does mean a lot, but loyalty without competence is you're looking for a disaster there. If
Yeah.
you got nothing but buddies that
And
you put in places.
loyalty without conviction too,
Right.
because if you're loyal to someone but you're not standing up for what you believe is true, doesn't matter how loyal you are to that person, you're forgoing the truth for some.
You're not
I've
telling
always-
them. You're not telling them that they're wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
I've always said this. Loyalty is a good character trait. It's a fantastic character trait. And we have another one walking in. It's Sergeant Sean Robinson of the Henry County Sheriff's Office. That guy right there, that's a solid operator right there, man. He was one of my go-to guys. Give him a little plug. Maybe he gets promoted. But no, loyalty is a great characteristic. It really is. Blind loyalty is not necessarily good.
No.
You know?
Yeah, that's right.
And you
Yeah.
see a lot of that with administrations or leadership, people in leadership positions that do exactly what Andy's talking about. Hey, let me grab my buddy. He's going to be, over here with me. That guy is probably, I'm going to say probably, I can't say that.
Could
he,
be.
he may not be the best one for that position because he might not have any idea what he's doing.
Right, right.
And or his moral compass doesn't necessarily point where I need it to point.
Yeah.
Or if he does, then he's not going to tell you you're wrong because he's afraid of offending you because you're
his buddy.
friend.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
you're not really anybody's friend if you don't tell somebody when they're wrong. Everybody wants to get caught up in this thing in the Bible. It says, don't judge people. Don't judge people. That's not what the Bible says.
No.
The Bible says, judge not, lest you be judged. So it's saying that if you're going to judge,
That's
then
right.
you need to be prepared to be judged
Preach it.
also. So it's not saying don't judge people. And when people are wrong, we actually have a moral responsibility to tell them when they're wrong. And that's true with leadership also.
And to have the courage to tell them because we know that we're going to be judged back.
Yeah,
That's where the
exactly.
courage comes in because I think a lot of people are fearful of that because they don't want to be looked at. But the reality is we have to do that. And that means we've got to be disciplined. We've got to be looking at our own selves, looking at introspection here, saying, I don't have it all together, but I'm going to help you walk through this. You know?
Right.
You have to have the ability to shine the mirror on yourself.
Yeah.
All right. And in those positions that Andy's talking about, you have to have the ability to do the things that just suck. They do. I mean, there's no other way to put it. To look at a guy that you like, he's your buddy, he's your this, he works for you, does that, and go, hey, you screwed up. You were way off and you messed up. And you're wrong.
Right.
Because you're going to offend him, you're going to tick him off, and you may end a friendship at that point. But your position, your moral code, your principles, it requires you to do that. And those go back to the things that we were talking about. The burdens that you put on your shoulders, they get heavy.
Yeah. I had a deputy one time, and it was really no fault of his because some other people who were actually on call had been called to come out to a scene one night, and they weren't available. They didn't answer the call, so the dispatcher just kept going down the line and got this guy, and he had had a couple beers earlier in the night but had went to sleep. The guy was not intoxicated whatsoever, but he came out to a scene, and an officer from another agency reported to one of his superiors or to a superior with the sheriff's office that, hey, this guy's been drinking. And he had. Like I said, he was not under the influence. But I'd known this guy a long time. I knew his family, all that kind of stuff and everything. And even though he was not intoxicated, and it was really no fault of his own because the other guys didn't answer their telephones, and he felt obliged to come out. And it had been several hours since he had had a drink. But I ended up, having to give this guy 3 days off with no pay. And I didn't want to do that, but I had to do it. And it was the right thing to do. And the thing about it is, he recognized that also and said, "Hey, I understand."
And that comes from the leadership having the respect of the people, or I'll say the respect of the guys that he leads. You didn't have a choice in that matter because your policy and procedure states X.
Right.
All right. And you have to, we've already discussed this, in that position, you have to be fair to everyone. That means if this guy does this and receive this, then this guy's got to do, if he does the same thing, same consequences are going to be there. But that comes from, if you have the respect of your men, they understand this, they see this. And now, on the other side of that, the lack of respect for the person in that position, you might have had a different outcome. Guy might have quit. Whatever the case is, you could have had a different scenario. It comes down to the fairness of it. But now we've been talking about all the things that are hard to do in leadership. And Andy, maybe you can expound on some of this too, or that's what I want you to do. We've been talking about all the things that are hard to do, and you know, it is a tough challenge when somebody wants to step up into that role. Let's talk about some of the things that are positive. You know, we've been talking about, okay, if these people, you got to be able to take the hard actions. But a good leader is also going to be able to learn how to motivate his people as well.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got these guys that are, you know, good performers in whatever arena you're in. You've got to be able to show your appreciation to them as well. Take yourself out of that, not take all the credit for everything that's done. Well, I did this because I'm in charge of it, yada, yada, yada. You've got to give that where it is. You build respect in, I don't allow you to do the things you're not supposed to do, but I also reward you, and I give you the credit when necessary, and I help to teach you how to do the right things. It comes down to teaching, mentoring, as Andy said many times, and showing the appreciation for those good jobs that are done. So
Yeah.
can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, you've always got to reward your people. I mean, you always, you know, discipline in private and reward people in public.
That's good.
You want
Yeah.
to make sure that people do get the recognition that they deserve for doing a good job. It doesn't matter if it's something heroic or they did something that saved someone's life or they just did a good job. You know, conducted a good investigation or made a good traffic stop on patrol or whatever the case may be. You've got to make sure you reward people and just, you know, giving people just a little pat on the back. And a lot of times it doesn't have to be anything formal. You don't have to have a formal ceremony, you know, no formal letter or some, you know, medal to hang on their chest. It's just a lot of it's about, you know, slapping somebody on the back and saying, "Hey, you did a great job out there today. You know, I'm proud of you."
Yeah.
You know, you know, what would an employee rather hear from their leader other than "I'm proud of you"?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah,
You know, I'm proud
absolutely.
of you.
Say, hey, you hit the mark today.
Yeah,
That's it.
You
In
know,
the back of their mind, it's, hey, he noticed.
Yeah.
They noticed. Man,
Yeah.
that's
It's every single day, and you need to be out there working with them. I don't care, you know, I don't care if you're a chief or if you're a sheriff or you're a highway patrol commander or whatever the case may be. You know, leadership is not about some photo op and getting out there when the news media is going to be there and that kind of thing. You need to be out there all the time with them. You know, and like I said before, if you think that you're in a position to where, hey, I'm just an administrator now, it's probably time for you to go into the house and retire or quit or whatever, because if you've lost touch with what's really going on, and that doesn't matter if you run a factory and you're not out on the factory floor. It doesn't matter if you got people building roads and you're not out here on the road with them. It doesn't matter if you're a cop, you know, a chief or a sheriff, and you're not out here in the streets with your people, fire service, EMS, whatever the case may be, or military. If you're not out there with your people on a pretty much daily basis, you consider yourself just to be an administrator, somebody sets up an office and signs paperwork and stuff, then you probably need to go on home. You know, you probably weren't much of a leader to start with.
One of the best statements out there I've heard. In command positions, you do have, you know, you've got to assume that command position. And Andy's right. You need to, the saying that I've always liked is, I will never ask you to do anything that I have not done myself or I'm not willing to roll up my sleeves and do with you. And that goes so far. I mean, that is such a bold, just huge statement, especially to your people. And again, in whatever, you know, line it is, maybe it's a factory job and you guys are falling behind. And that shop foreman, whatever you might term him, is he rolls his sleeves up, he gets in there, and you get the job done. People see that. They look at that and they're like, man, he's willing to do this with us. We need to follow that guy. Andy Hughes used to get out at midnight and ride around. And I mean, it would be easy for him to sit in his office all day long, which I found him sitting in his office a lot. I'm just kidding. But there would be times that you would hear, you know, he'd call out his number. He'd call it on a traffic stop. He'd call out on answering a call, you know, at 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. Do you know how far that goes with people? When I was chief of the small department I'd get out with these guys. You know, I'd have somebody out on the road. I'd come out. I would go to work. I would answer calls. They need the help. They need to know that, you know, you're there. You're going to help, and you're going to be with them.
Yeah. You might not always do it, but they've got to know that you're actually willing to do it.
Yeah, that you're willing to step into that role.
Yeah.
Hey, I got to step off for just a second. You guys continue.
You're good.
You know, Thomas, something I was going to bring up. And this is none of my none of my wisdom or any of my teachings, but something I got out of a command and staff college course. But two types of leadership. There's selflessness, which is about strength, and selfishness, that's about weakness. We don't ever want to be selfish leaders.
That's
you want
really
to be
good.
selfless leaders. It's never about you as the leader. It should always be about your people, about your organization,
Explain
about your
why
mission.
selflessness requires strength and selfishness is weak.
Yeah. Well, our natural inclination is for ourselves. I mean, people are selfish by nature. I mean, it's just our nature. I mean, it's kind of like self-preservation. It's about you, and a lot of times you really have to fight hard against that. To think, hey, it's not about me. It's about my people. It's about my family, or whatever the case may be. It's about them, and you've got to give of yourself and give up things that you would normally want to do, or to something to gain, or whatever the case may be. But it's not about you. It's about others.
That's good.
And that's selflessness. It's not selflessness. It's not about you. It's not about self. It's about others. And that's a very important aspect.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of willpower. That takes discipline. That takes a lot of why. You got to have a big why there for you to sacrifice yourself. It's got to be for something greater than just a temporary gain. It has to be something eternal. A lot of times,
Right.
You're thinking, if I'm gonna sacrifice my time, if I'm gonna sacrifice what I want for this person, we're not gonna do that if we're constantly focused on ourselves.
Right.
That's just not gonna happen.
True leaders don't seek the attention of others. They give attention to
That's
others.
really good, and I was hoping we would get there. That's so good.
And that goes back to telling people, hey, good job, a pat on the back. You did great today. I'm proud of you. That kind of thing. It's giving attention to others. Not receiving attention.
Yeah, and you were saying about being the smartest person in the room. I've heard this saying a lot, where a good leader doesn't want to be the smartest person in the room. There's that saying. You know what I'm talking about? What's that?
If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah, that's it.
So you need to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you.
But also like trying to one up the person, like, you know what I mean? Where if you're trying to draw all the attention, trying to look like you're the smartest person in the room, you're putting everybody down. But when you build other people up and make them look like they're the smartest person in the room, like you want them, a lot of times that comes in asking questions.
Right.
Not talking as much, whatever that is. Those are the practical things. But there's a saying there, and I got to find it, but I'll look it up.
If you're a leader and you surround yourself with people who are actually smarter than you are, then you're going to look better as a leader than if you thought you were always right and you were always the smartest person in the room.
That's right.
There's a delicate balance there. Yes, you've gained experience and wisdom through years of service and getting promoted, but nobody ever knows it all.
Yeah.
Nobody should really. Do you really want to be called an expert? That kind of lends.
That's a lot of responsibility.
That you know it all.
Yeah.
And I've been qualified as an expert on the witness stand before, but that doesn't mean that you're an expert as far as you know it all.
Right.
It's just that you know something about a particular subject.
Right. That someone
the
else
time.
might not know.
Yeah.
At the time, and that does make you more knowledgeable in that area, but it doesn't mean that you are smarter than anybody else.
Nobody is an expert at everything. Nobody.
Yeah.
So.
And there's a John Maxwell leadership lesson that he teaches where he talks about, if you want, and this is not necessarily how I see the world, but it's not a bad lesson because of the mindset it creates. If you want to get something, you need to look to give things to others. If you want something from somebody, you have to be willing to give them what they want and need. But we don't need to go around wanting things from people.
Right.
But our mindset should be, if I want, the only way our business is going to succeed, right? If we're talking about business standpoint, the only way my family is going to succeed, the only way we're going to succeed is if I look for the benefit of everyone else around me, not myself. That's the only way. that it will actually succeed. And if everyone does that, it'll exponentially succeed.
Exactly.
My dad used to sit there and, my dad had the saying, you've heard the saying about marriage. Marriage is 50-50. No, it ain't. I mean, you can take what I'm about to say and you can apply it to anything, to relationships with anybody, to business operations, to law enforcement, to military. You can apply this to everything, but marriage is not 50-50. All right. And this is probably something we could use in a podcast, a whole other episode about marriage. And Andy's over there thinking, who are you to talk about marriage? But I'm doing good now.
I'm proud of you.
I appreciate it. But marriage is not 50-50. Marriage is, if you look at it in the mindset of what you're talking about, marriage is 70-30. Okay. If I'm willing to give 70 and only take 30, and both parties in that are doing that, how could that fail? If both parties are receiving more than they're, if both parties are giving more than they're taking, then you're fulfilling everything. And if everybody does that on every level, as far as, okay, like you said, relationships, business, law enforcement, if we have that mindset of I'm going to give more than I take, and everybody's on board with that, how can things fail?
Like you're saying, 50-50 creates a mindset of I'm going to keep count because I'm going to get what I deserve.
Yeah. 50-50 is, I did this for you. You need to do this for me.
Right. You're like, I'm going to sacrifice, here and get back very little, and that's okay.
And
that's a better
okay.
mindset. And an even better mindset is I'm going to give all and not expect anything, but that's hard to get to.
That's hard to get to.
That's a hard place to get to.
But when you get to that, I'm more concerned about having that giving heart, having that, doing for you than I am for what I can get from you.
That's right.
That's where we need to get to.
Yeah.
And leaders need to get there more than anybody.
Yes.
It's kind of funny how you guys are thinking, because I've got another passage of scripture here that I had researched.
See how God works that out?
Exactly, and found. And, my wheels are turning here while you two were just talking, but Philippians 2:3-5 says, "Do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind regard one another as more important than yourselves. Do not merely look out for your own personal interest, but also for the interest of others. Have this attitude in yourselves, which was also in Christ Jesus."
That's right.
And that applies directly to what
Absolutely.
you were just saying.
Absolutely.
We don't do anything expecting anything else in return. You always do things for the right reasons.
Yep.
And never expect, just like the old saying, and as we've called our president here, quid pro quo, Joe, something for something. You don't do something expecting something else, or you don't do something expecting payment in return from somebody else. Yes, you do somebody a favor. We always expect a favor from them when we need one, but we should not be disappointed if we don't get it either.
Don't get it.
Because that should not have been your reason
That's
for
right.
doing something to start with.
Yeah. If anything's given back, it's a bonus, not a requirement.
Now, on the other end, if somebody does do me a favor, do I feel obligated to do them a favor if I can?
Where's that
At
coming
some
from?
other point, it's coming from my heart, and that's, I think that favor should be returned. But some people may not think that way, and if they don't, that's fine, because you didn't do that for that reason to start with, or you weren't doing it for the right reasons.
Right.
And we can societally say that that's a hard thing to do. That's a hard place to get to as an individual today, as a leader, as as a man. It's a hard place to get to today, because society says today, you do this, you'll get that. Take care of self. Do this for you. When we don't need to be doing it for us, we need to be doing it for the betterment of everything around us. Mm-hmm. I need to be doing things. This is going to sound like I'm sitting there, hey, get a pat on the back. We didn't open the stockyard because I wanted to make $1 million. I'd love to make $1 million, but I know that this is a hard business to get into. We opened the stockyard because we felt like this was something given to us to God, so we could give back to other people. And in doing so, look at what we're doing now. Look at what we're doing now. And when I say we're doing, I'm pointing all three of us. Andy's been talking about wanting a platform for a long time to just be able to have his voice heard, because he's got a lot to say.
Oh, yeah.
You have been, this has given you something where you can put out the things that drive you as well. Mm-hmm. This is giving me a sense of fulfillment, because I think it's something that you guys can expound on, and I wanted to do this for you guys. That's what I finally was able to understand. When we do it for reasons other than that selfish reason that I want it, the feelings you get from that, the fulfillment you get from that, it far surpasses anything that you could ever, imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, people always they always want to ask God for things.
Yeah.
I want this, Lord. Please give me this. Please open this door for me. Please give me this opportunity. But they forget that last most important part. That is, not my will, but thine be done.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it may not be in your time. It may not be in your fashion either. But you've always got to remember to add that last part there. Not my will, but
Yeah.
thine be done.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Andy, you got anything else you want to? You got a whole list of notes there, man.
Well, I had some stuff, and there's some other stuff here that applies. I had made some notes about government and about Romans and about submitting to the government and that kind of thing. But I think that's a whole nother podcast there too.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes there's some confusion there, but I had those notes along with the ones about. God ordains all leaders, for
Right.
specific purposes. But I think we can go into the whole Romans thing at some other point. We talk about bear the sword one day,
Yeah.
and we can include all that. But I'm glad we had this talk on leadership today. And at some point, we want to get some type of medium where people who listen to us maybe can communicate some things back to us about things that they want to hear about on the podcast and issues that they may want us to talk about and address. So I hope Thomas is our tech guy. Me and Eric.
We're the knuckle draggers.
It's like a shirt I saw years ago, and I told my buddy David Sewell, I said we need one of these shirts. It said I may not be very smart, but I can lift heavy things. So we're just Thomas is he's a tech guy, and me and Eric just pick the tables
Yeah,
up.
we pick the tables up and move them.
That's all right.
That kind of thing.
Let me give a little. I know, and I may be speaking out of turn here, but if you are listening, and we hope you are, Andy Hughes is doing speaking engagements now, and if you would, we'll put out something as we go where he can be contacted for any of those events. Great speaker, a lot of knowledge on several different topics, and if you will be looking to have some of your events filled with something that could really motivate and uplift your people, I think you could find a lot worse people than Andy Hughes to sit there and do those comments.
You can get more content from him than just this
Than just this, yeah.
podcast for sure. It would be really beneficial, and we'll put in the show notes. That's where we'll put that information, and we'll put it there. And something else I want to say real quick before we end is if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review. Let us know what you think. We want to know what you think. If it's not 5 stars, that's okay. We want to know what you think.
Yeah, be honest, but be nice.
And wherever you're listening from right now, if you're able to leave a review, or if you're just able to comment or say whatever it is that you think, whatever you're gaining from these conversations, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, Eric, I appreciate you including me in this venture. I asked God on numerous occasions for opportunities to speak and to pour out my soul about different subjects as far as leadership and Christianity and law enforcement and lack of leadership and that kind of thing and lessons learned. But I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be a part of this. I think it's something really good, and I enjoy. Look forward to every single Tuesday morning whenever we come in and record these podcasts here, and hope we can put out some good content that may be useful to somebody, that may benefit someone, and more importantly, may touch someone's soul.
Yeah, and if you ever want to come and listen to us live,
We're
while
here.
we're doing these podcasts, 8:30, usually Tuesday mornings, we're here at the Stockyard. Grab some coffee.
Grab some
You can
coffee,
come
grab
sit
one
and
of the
chill.
sandwiches she does,
Yeah.
and you'll love it.
You can come hang out with us.
All right, and again, I'd like to add in there all the coffee that comes from or is served here at the Stockyard comes from Ural City Coffee in Dothan, Alabama. Go see Zach and Destiny. Outstanding people, outstanding product, outstanding environment to sit and just have a good time. Ural City Coffee Works, downtown Dothan. From the Stockyard here, we're glad you listened today. Hope you got something out of it. Who wants to close us out today? I think Thomas should close us out today. Go ahead.
I'll do it. God, I just thank you for this opportunity to be here with these men talking about things that are meaningful, important, and eternal. Father, I pray that as we go throughout our week, we'll take the things that we talked about and actually apply them, really hear these things and try to be better men because of them, be better children of you, to expand your kingdom and to show people what it means to be a true leader under the authority of Christ. And we love you. We're ready to do those things. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.